A woman of valor who can find, for her worth is far above rubies. That's the verse from Proverbs that starts a song that Jewish men traditionally sing to their wives at Friday night dinner. When I was born, my mother was determined to turn me into a woman of valor, but she took one look at the mop of curly hair and the mischievous eyes, and she knew she was going to need some help at that. And so she enlisted the aid of the matriarchs, my grandmother, my great-aunt Frida, and my great-aunt Bernice. And then she decided that I needed somebody relatable as a role model, and so another young lady joined our household, Barbara Millicent Rogers, better known to most of you as Barbie. Now, each of my relatives had some particular virtue they were supposed to teach me. My grandmother's was hygiene. That mostly came in the form of the individually wrapped wash and dry towelettes that she filled her purse with at all times. The slightest sniffle was treated with sprays of disinfectant, so that the air in my grandparents' apartment was about 15% Lysol. Her greatest weapon, though, was scalding hot water and harsh yellow soap, which were applied after pretty much any trip outside. Now, I don't think I was a particularly dirty child, but we lived at the beach, and going outside pretty much meant ending up covered with a patina of fine white sand, and then being subject to that hot water and soap treatment, and I cried and cried every time. Barbie, of course, never went outside, and she could tolerate even the hottest water. Valor score, Barbie 1, Miriam 0. Aunt Frida was in charge of thrift. Now, this was a misunderstanding on my mother's part, because it was the 1960s and we had not yet learned about hoarders. Frida's motto was, "Save it, it might be good for something." And as far as I could tell, she had worn the same two dresses since she immigrated to the United States from Poland in 1920. This approach was not going to work for me because I was growing rapidly and I was a different size more or less anytime everybody turned around. Barbie, of course, always stayed the same size. And in fact, she was small enough that Mom could make clothes for her out of remnants left over from the curtains in the house. And she could knit sweaters for her out of leftovers from her own knitting. And Barbie never complained about even the scratchiest Woolworth's mohair. I had very little interest in clothing. And when I played with Barbie, I mostly dressed her in a black unitard like Emma Peel from the Avengers. And I had her fighting off wild animals out of my stuffed menagerie and beating away Russian spies. Valor score, Barbie 2, Miriam 0. Now, Aunt Bernice was supposed to teach me a sort of demure femininity. She lived in a neat little bungalow that was filled with replicas of Degas ballerinas and little porcelain statuettes of shepherdesses, and her most prized possession, a piano on which she could play exactly one song, the Little Fairy Waltz. What Bernice was mostly supposed to teach me, though, was a soft-spokenness, and she was more general on femininity, and in fact, I asked for a chemistry set for my birthday one year, and she gave me a make-your-own perfume kit as a more suitable feminine alternative. But the soft-spokenness was what was supposed to be emphasized, and that had a fatal flaw, because I heard the rest of the members of my mom's family, and Grandma could cuss in 4 languages, and Frida's motto, appropriated from Alice Roosevelt Longworth, was, "If you don't have anything nice to say, sit next to me." Barbie, of course, never spoke a word. Valor score, Barbie 3, Miriam 0. But despite my failure to live up to the expectations of the matriarchs, I found that I did actually live up to the woman of valor, because I went and I read that whole section of Proverbs. The woman who's described there buys wool and flax. Well, I'm a knitter. Just look at my closet full of yarn. She brings in food from far away. I think the Asian foods aisle at Wegmans qualifies. And she speaks with wisdom. Well, I went and I researched exactly the price of rubies, and I discovered they sell for anywhere from $300,000 to $15,000. The first edition Barbie has sold as much as $27,000 in auction. My mother shouldn't have been looking for me to have a worth above rubies. She should have been looking for me to have a worth above Barbies. Valor score, Miriam, thousands, Barbie, 0. Thank you.